You're on, Scott.
Okay, greetings, good evening, and once again, bienvenue. Welcome to the LDM Talks Sports Show. I am your guest host again. My name is Scott Blander, for those who are new or don't remember me. Alfonso will be back next week. Fear not, he got called away on urgent business again, so I will be taking over, and joining me once again is my co-host from north of the border in Montreal, Canada, Quebec province, Patrick White. Patrick, how are you?
I am doing great. Big day for the Montreal Canadiens today, so I'm doing very well.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Not a lot of good news this year, so you got to be happy with what's going on in the front office there these days.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been really terrible to watch, and I have no life, so I watch every game anyways. And I've been getting tired of seeing them lose by 4 or more goals on a regular basis. So hopefully Marty St. Louis can help turn this around. I got a lot about to say. I have a lot to say about that, but we can get into that when we get to that subject.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get to that. So we got we'll switch over to the pigskin. Might as well start there since we've got a pretty big game coming up this weekend, known as Super Bowl Sunday. And, of course, the Cincinnati Bengals against your are they Los Angeles? Where the Rams are calling home these days. I think we'll
Los Angeles
for now. Yes. So, well, me personally, I don't, for the first time in a long time, I don't hate either team. Remember, I started off these playoffs with both Dallas and Philly in it, so that was disastrous. But luckily, they both got out on the same day, which was fantastic. You got a couple of feel-good stories here. You got the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl. Up until a month ago, had not won a playoff game since 1991. And now all of a sudden they've won 3, and they are on their way to they're there. They're about 3 days away from the Super Bowl. And, their record's a little misleading. They're 10-7, and 10-7 is not usually the norm for a Super Bowl record, but they got hot at the right time. They fought through an incredible division, incredible meaning tight, because them at 10-7 winning the division. The Baltimore finished last in the division at 8-9. So not the strongest of divisions by powerhouse wise, but the fact that it was so tight, and Alfonso and I were talking about this last week. Cincinnati really had to fight tooth and nail just to win that division. So, comparable in hockey, when in hockey you see, 6, 7s, and 8 seeds, advance and make deep playoff runs. And the reason is that I think because those teams have to fight so hard just to get into those playoffs. You remember the 2 Stanley Cup, the 2 Los Angeles Kings Stanley Cup teams were, I believe, 7 and 8 seeds, maybe 6, one of them, and won 2 Stanley Cups because they had to fight just to get in there. And you see that a lot in hockey, but so here you're seeing it in football with the Bengals winning that division at 10-7. Fighting just to win that division, and they absolutely caught fire. Joe Burrow has really emerged as one of the elites in the league. And then on the other end, you've got the Rams, and another feel-good story there, one that you can relate to, being a Detroit Lions fan. You've got Matthew Stafford, and we were talking about this as well. So Matthew Stafford, I think, for a decade was probably the most underrated quarterback in the league because
absolutely.
Yep, he was great. But when you're on the Detroit, no offense, but when you're on the Detroit Lions for a decade, you don't really get put in the same category as your Brady's and your Mahomes and whatnot. But here he is in year 1 on a quality team, and he's in the Super Bowl. So my question for you as a Detroit Lions fan, an ailing Detroit Lions fan, how do you feel about Stafford in this Super Bowl?
Well, first, I'm really happy for Matthew Stafford. I'm going to be pulling for LA for sure, just for Stafford, because after following the Lions since the mid-90s, he's definitely the best quarterback I've ever seen play for him. And if you take a look at his career numbers and like rushing, like passing yards, touchdowns, the numbers he's reached, he's done it younger than a lot of greats has. I can't name the exact numbers now, but I remember, watching them a couple of years ago, and they were talking about how quickly he's reached like the number of passing yards, the number of touchdowns, which is a lot quicker than I think they were talking about like Joe Montana, possibly even Brett Favre. So I definitely think he's probably he's definitely the most underrated quarterback I've ever seen. And if he wins the Super Bowl, I think he's going to have a great shot at getting to the Hall of Fame. So
that's a bold statement, but one that I would actually agree with there. He has put up good numbers. I remember he had a terrible record against playoff teams. I remember seeing that stat last year, a couple of years ago. But again, he was on just terrible, terrible teams. And here he is wasting no time in year one on a quality team, and he's already in the Super Bowl. So absolutely great to see. I honestly, who am I? So you're rooting for the Rams, obviously. I'm not really. I'm just hoping for a good game. I mean, like I said, I have nobody to hate. I don't. I'm happy for both Stafford and Burrow. They're both, kind of. Well, the Rams have been good all year. I wouldn't really call them a Cinderella team. I've got, as a Giants fan, I've got Odell Beckham on the Rams as well, but I'm kind of indifferent there. He ended kind of messily his tenure with the Giants, and I don't hate the guy. He's not one of these Giants legends that I really care about. So I'm kind of indifferent for him. If he wins it, good for him. If he doesn't, so be it. Whatever. So I'm not really rooting for anyone in particular. I'm just hoping for a good game and whatnot. So let's talk predictions. So you're rooting for the Rams.
I'm rooting for the Rams, but I also think that a Super Bowl win would be great for the city of Cincinnati, who hasn't seen a championship since the late 80s Reds, I believe. So I think it'd be great for them. A lot of their teams aren't doing great except for the Bengals. You look at their MLS team, who's probably the worst team in the league that league has ever seen. So they've been suffering for a while. So it might be nice for them to, at least get, to get this close and maybe pull out a win. But I just think that LA is too strong. They've been too consistent, and I'm hoping for a good game. But I think that Los Angeles might pull out a convincing win here on Sunday.
Okay, there you go. All right, so there you go. The big game coming up. So we've also got another big event going on over on the other side of the planet in the Olympics. Now, this is one of the stranger Olympics we've ever seen. We can skip where it's being played and all that. That's an argument for another time. But in any case, COVID is one of your big factors and whatnot. The NHL bailed on sending pros. I happen to agree with that decision. I think, we were talking about this last week as well. Being in China, again, all politics aside, but just in the COVID era, that's pretty much the last place that you want to go. But I don't even think it matters. It doesn't really matter if they were in England or well, I guess more Winter Olympics suitable country. We'll call it Norway. It wouldn't even matter if it was there. I think that with COVID still going on in some capacity, an international get together of athletes, fans, media, just from all over the planet, I don't think there's really in anyone's best interest. I'm a supporter of, under normal circumstances, I am a supporter of the pros in the Olympics in every sport. I think the rules on what makes a quote unquote professional versus amateur in terms of a paycheck is really all that matters. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's always been ridiculous. You go back to the Soviet Union days before 1992, before pros were officially allowed in, and the Soviets were always had pros in there anyway, just because they were able to skirt the rules on the whole professional paycheck and whatnot behind that iron curtain. So it's always been a very, very gray area. Anyway, I am a big supporter of the country sends the best it has to offer, period. What they do for a living, where they get their paycheck, to me is irrelevant. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the way the Russians were able to get around that is because all their players were part of the army, right? So they weren't considered professional hockey players. They're considered soldiers that played hockey on the side, even though that really wasn't the case at all. But I mean, if you take a look at the teams, I know the United States pulled off a big win against China, and one of the Habs prospects, that Jordan Harris, had a 4-point game. So hopefully he can be of help to my ailing Montreal Canadiens down the line. And I think Canada pulled out a win this morning. Also, I didn't see the score, but I don't know if you've seen any of the hockey yet. But they're having these players play with N95 masks on.
I saw that the women, I saw pictures of, and I haven't watched any of the games. I saw the pictures that the women had to wear them, and have to wear them too.
Yes.
Okay.
So
at least we're going for equity there. I think that's absolutely pure insanity, personally. I mean, you're cutting down on oxygen. I remember, when this whole thing started, of course, I'm not exactly in Olympic caliber shape, but I remember going to Six Flags when this whole thing started in 2020, when it was still raging, and walking around in a 90-degree heat in those masks, and it was just awful. So I could not even imagine playing an aerobic sport like ice hockey with masks on. I think that's insanity, really. It is. Yeah. What? I assume you are not in favor of the masks. We're talking strictly.
Yeah. I think it's crazy. I mean, I think it's going to hinder their performance. Sure. Right? Because they're going to be huffing and puffing under those masks. And, they're going to get tired quicker. It's just, I don't think it's good for anybody. Sure, they want to be as safe as possible, but let's be real. When, mask or not, you're sitting on the bench, you're taking face-offs. If there's COVID around, you might still get it regardless of the mask or triple vaccines or whatever, So I just think it's hindering the games more than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. Because now you have, like you said, you're going to tire quicker, so the shifts have to be shorter. So the coaches have to completely redesign their playbook. Shifts might be under 30 seconds long now. It's a lot of firsts. We've been in uncharted waters in pretty much every aspect of everyone's lives since March 2020, and now Olympic hockey is resetting the bar, it seems.
Yeah, we went to two of the last sporting events in Montreal with fans when you were down here in February of 2020. Everything shut down a couple of weeks after that, and since then, living this new normal, and hopefully, everything can get back to normal soon. Obviously,
hopefully that's the key. So I've got up in front of me, I've got the women's hockey. Actually, one thing that isn't changed is is Canada and the United States are pretty much 1 and 2 favorites there. They had a great game. Now, I didn't see the game the other day. Canada pulled that out 4-2, and the United States had what was a 51 shot, something like that. I mean, they just poured on all hail your goaltender there. But now they're talking about possibly a collision course in the medal round, which makes perfect sense. I know the U.S. went 3-1 record. Is Canada undefeated? Do you know in the women's?
Yeah, they're undefeated. They went to 5-0, I believe. And you can't discount Finland either, though. Finland is a very good team. They're probably by far and away the third best team in this tournament.
Yeah. So yeah. All right. So that's probably why I would imagine that the U.S. with a 3-1 record, they've got another game coming. What is it? 5 games in the prelims?
I believe so. And then you got the quarterfinals, semifinals, and the finals. And I believe some of the teams have to play an extra game for like I'm not exactly sure the format, but if it's like men's Olympic hockey, then there's an extra round to get to the quarterfinals for the maybe the second and third seeded teams in the groups.
Okay, so it should be interesting. I usually I haven't watched much Olympics this year, and it has nothing to do with not, it's nothing to do with protesting or boycotting or anything. My interest level is just at an all-time low, and that's probably a byproduct of everything that's going on.
And everything's on in the middle of the night too, so it's really hard to follow unless you want to stay up all night and not sleep.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Yes, with the time difference, that's always a big challenge for the Olympics, because half the planet, no matter where they are, half the planet is not going to be able to watch things live, like you said, unless they want to.
Yeah, and it's 2 straight Winter Olympics now that they're playing in either Korea or China. So it's been really tough to watch the past couple of the last 2 Olympics. So I'm not sure what the next ones are, but hopefully it's in a more normal time zone for us at least.
I mean they assign these games years in advance, so the schedule is set, whatnot. But I would see them back in I mentioned in Norway. I remember in the 90s, I think was it Lillehammer had them.
No, the first time was in Nagano. 98 Nagano. I remember because I still have this memory of Wayne Gretzky sitting on the bench in the shootout when they lost to the Czech Republic in the semifinals. Dominic Hasek just completely stole that game. Eric Lindros hit it off the post, and we thought it was going to goal. The only goal that was scored was Jaromir Jagr on Patrick Waugh in that shootout.
Well, that makes sense. Patrick Waugh, Dominic Hasek, Olympic matchup. That's pretty much as you can get. Pretty much in hockey history, dare I say.
Probably.
Because in my opinion, those are your number 1 and 2 goaltenders in hockey history. I get an argument with Devil fans all the time because, yes, Brodeur does have the most wins. Not to take anything away from the great Marty Brodeur, but I think his system that he had, when you have Scott Stevens and Ken Danico and Scott Niedermayer in front of you for a decade with a neutral zone trap for a lot of that, and I'm not criticizing the trap, it worked to the Devils' advantage. You're going to get some wins. So again, not taking anything away, but for my money, the best goaltender in NHL history is Dominic Hasek, and
I would say Waugh, but just because of his playoff numbers, right? He stepped up when it mattered the most, and he's the only player in NHL history to have 3 Conn Smythe trophies as well.
And that's fair. That's not even you being a Montreal homer. That's a fair statement. Absolutely. It's pretty much like for like. But why? Would you agree? Would you have Brodeur in that top 2, or would you have him below Hasek?
It's really tough, right? I mean, Stanley Cups mean a lot to me. I was never a fan of Dominic Hasek. Being a goalie myself, his style just bothered me so much because I was watching him. I'm like, how is he doing this? Like dropping the stick, rolling over, doing all these crazy things. But, at the end of the day, it really didn't matter. He probably, the only other goalie I've seen dominate like Dominic Hasek did for, I think he won 3 straight Vezina or something like that. The only other goalie I've seen have a season as dominant as Dominic Hasek was Carey Price's Vezina, Hart Trophy, Ted Lindsay Award, and best goals against average season. So that's
fair enough. All right. So we are on to the hockey. We've got the All-Star break just happened, and games are back. It's it almost doesn't feel like it for me because the Rangers they had a couple games canceled for COVID, but I think the Rangers only had games canceled when the league shut down. They didn't have any select games canceled like most of the other teams did. So we've got a solid week off now until Tuesday. Speaking of the Rangers, so they currently sit in second place in the Metropolitan Division, 1 point back of Carolina, but Carolina does have 3 games at hand. And I went down to Carolina a couple weeks ago and watched them thoroughly give the Rangers just all sorts of beating. Carolina is definitely a legit team. They are back in Stanley Cup form there, and they've been building for a while now. I think they finally have a goaltender in Frederick Anderson, and because that's been their Achilles heel for the last 2-3 years now. But in any case, great game. You were asking me about this a little while ago. The Rangers went into the break with a game against Florida, and that's been one of the criticisms of the Rangers is that they're beating up on the lesser teams, which of course you're supposed to do. But they didn't have that great of a record against your top-notch team. And I think over the past month, they've gotten a lot better with that. They beat Tampa twice. They beat Boston. They beat Toronto. They beat not beat Colorado. That was ugly. Did not beat Vegas. Okay, so that right there, and then so they played Florida at the Garden, the last game before the All-Star break. And what I love about that game is the Rangers took a 1-goal lead into the third period, and the Rangers played well start to finish. Rangers hockey, when you have a 1-goal lead in the going into the third, and this transcends coaches, this transcends rosters. Rangers hockey usually is sit back, let the other team fire away, and hope your goalie is up to the task. But what I love about this game is that the Rangers didn't do that. They took it to Florida. They went for the throat. They ended up out holding the Panthers to 9 shots in the third period, and they ended up they went in with a 3-2 lead, got a goal late, and then with about 4 minutes left, that sealed the deal, and then an empty netter. So that was what was really, really encouraging to see, in that they did not sit back. You've got a Vezina candidate, Igor Shesterkin, and they did not rely on him. They took it to Florida, kind of like reminiscent of the U.S. in that Great Miracle on Ice game. They went toe to toe with the Russians and actually took it to the Russians, got 2 goals, and outscored the Soviets 2-0 in that third period for the win. The Rangers did kind of the same thing, did not sit back and dwell on that 1-goal lead like they've done for decades. So that was very encouraging to see, beating one of the top teams in the league, one of the Stanley Cup contenders. But the way they did it really impressed me. And now I've got another 4 days off. So we'll get to your team. As obviously not a lot to talk about on the ice, but you're getting some waves off the ice. Last month when we did this, we were talking about Jeff Gordon and your new GM, and now you have a coach. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, Marty St. Louis was presented to the media today. He was named head coach yesterday. When it started coming out, I really didn't believe it, but then more and more people started reporting that he was going to be the guy, and then early in the evening, the Montreal Canadiens announced on the Twitter page that they had hired Martin St. Louis as their new head coach, interim head coach. And so I took a look at the press conference today. I have to say, I was really impressed by what he had to say. Obviously, talk is talk, and we'll see what happens. But he will be behind the bench tonight. And just a few key takeaways I took from the press conference. First of all, he said he's not a big believer in systems. He's more into concepts, because he finds that systems hinder your best players from being able to express themselves, make reads. And for him, he wants his most talented players to be able to make reads. And he finds that if you're playing in a system, then you have to be in a certain place at a certain time, which, doesn't allow your best players to do what they do best. And he says that when good players are playing in a very strict system, they become average players, which I thought was really interesting for him to say. He also talked a little bit about he talked about hard work, and he said some guys work hard with their legs, but others work hard with their minds, which I thought was really interesting. Because, Marty St. Louis, he had that fire in his eyes. You could see it. He played his heart out every single shift, but he was also a really smart player. He knew where to be, when to be there. So I really think that's really interesting. That's the way the Montreal Canadiens want to play. That's what Kent Hughes was talking about. He wants his team to be a puck possession, hard-working, offensive team. So when I think of hard-working, puck possession, offensive teams, that makes me think of the Detroit Red Wings of the 90s. I think that's how he wants the team to play. So it's going to be really interesting to see tonight if they come out flying, because, Jesus, the Montreal Canadiens, I made a calculation today, have allowed, on average, 3.97 goals a game. So let's round that up to 4. You can't win in the National Hockey League when you're giving up 4 goals a game. And they've given up 50-plus shots on 3 different occasions this year. So, it was time for a change. They're talking about how originally they wanted to give Dominic Ducharme until the end of the season, but they decided during the break that he probably that he wouldn't be back next year. They already made that decision. They wanted to make the change during their last break. It's just the final details had to be settled. So, they lost 5-1 on Tuesday night. Next morning, they announced that they fired him. Later that night, they hired Marty St. Louis. So,
I like that decision. If you know you're going to fire your coach and you have the next in line ready to go, this is the perfect time to bring him in. The season's a wash, obviously. So, when you bring in a coach with a no offense, but a terrible team.
Worst team in the NHL, possibly one of the worst teams in NHL history. They have 8 wins.
Okay, so no offense taken, good. When you bring in a coach to a team, a new coach to a bad team, they're really starting behind the 8 ball. It's they're usually given a very brief window to turn it around, and especially in a city like Montreal, that window is going to be more briefer, their word. It's going to be shorter. It's going to be a shorter leash and a shorter window of opportunity to turn it around in a city like Montreal than, say, Phoenix or whatnot. So here he's got half the season to play with, completely house money, completely off the clock. If they finish, if they double their wins, if they finish 16 and 50 or whatnot, it has nothing against him. However, if they show vast improvement, it's a feather in his cap. So it's a no-lose situation for him. I like that. There's no point in keeping on a coach that you're not going to bring back. Let Marty get in there while he's playing with house money with absolutely nothing to lose. It is a surprising hire, though.
Yeah, he has his only coaching experience is a Pee-wee. He's coaching his son's Pee-wee team, and he actually joked around a little bit about that. One of the questions was, your only coaching experience is at a very junior level. He's like, "Oh, thanks. That's an understatement," and everybody kind of laughed. So I thought that was kind of funny, but
I think I could see him being a great coach. It's as Wayne Gretzky proved, it's not always the top-notch players that make great coaches. It's your it's the leadership. I mean, look at most of your successful coaches like a Lindy Ruff. Is a perfect example. I remember when he was on the Rangers in the 80s. He was a number 6 defenseman, I believe.
He was a bit of a tough guy too, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly, and a tough guy. So that tough attitude, is what makes a great coach. Wayne Gretzky, for all of his ridiculous skills, I don't really think he was much of a leader. Case in point, when he leaves,
too emotional.
Yeah. As we saw in that 96 World Cup. Sorry, I didn't mean to reopen the wound, but I don't have much in international United States hockey. I don't have.
That's okay. That puck was in the net, though. That puck was in the net. It was in Richter's glove, so you couldn't see it even on the. You could see it in the glove, though. You could see it through the mesh. Anyways, let's not revisit that. It's a lot of pain for me. but we win enough. So I'll give you one once in a while.
I'm still watching 1980 highlights, and you've got about 4 gold medals since then. Anyway, case in point, they win 4 Stanley Cups. Messier and Gretzky together on the Oilers. Gretzky with a big trade, and Messier takes over as captain, wins another Stanley Cup. So I think Messier and Messier, that's a story for another time. How he did not get a fair shake with the Rangers or anywhere. I'm surprised he hasn't tried to branch out on his own to try and get some. But in any case, Messier, one of the greatest captains and leaders in all of sports history. And I see that in Marty St. Louis. He was, we only got him on the Rangers as the tail end of his career. He was there. He came in at the deadline 2014, had a phenomenal playoffs in 2014. Phenomenal.
Carey Price makes that save, though. If Carey Price was in nets just because of his size, that overtime goal I'm talking about.
Yes.
I mean, all respect to Dustin Tokarski. He played his heart out. He's not Carey Price.
Yeah.
No, at all. But just one last thing on St. Louis, though. Jeff Gordon was talking about today about when St. Louis gave a speech to the players for the first time, that it gave him goosebumps. So I know that the Canadiens are going to be ready to play tonight. They have to be ready to play tonight. If this doesn't shake them up, I don't think anything will. But also what was interesting, they said that the hiring of Marty St. Louis is the first of many changes to come. So I expect probably Jeff Petrie requested to trade, and Darren Dreger on TSN has been talking about how there's a lot of teams that are interested in Jeff Petrie because they know he's not the defenseman that they're seeing this year, but he's the defenseman that was in early talks with the Norris Trophy last year. Also, I don't expect Ben Sherratt to be around much longer. I think they're going to try and move Jonathan Drouin before the deadline, but he's got one more year on his contract. So I think next year might be a better bet to see him move on. But also, Marty St. Louis is going to do wonders for, of all players, Cole Caulfield. Cole Caulfield's been handcuffed this year. After a great playoffs last year, great end of the season, he's been the best goal scorer. He's the best goal scorer in U.S. men development team history, ahead of Austin Matthews. So there's definitely much more to his game, although I might like to see him go back down to the AHL, just get his confidence back up. He's got 1 goal. He's been playing on the 4th line. You want him to be playing top 6 minutes on your first power play unit, and maybe Marty St. Louis will give him that shot. But who better to learn as an undersized guy from probably one of the greatest undersized players to ever lace up the skates than Marty St. Louis? Same thing with Nick Suzuki, another undersized guy. We just signed him to a huge contract extension. I don't think, at first I was skeptical, but after hearing him speak today, I think, at least for now, he's the right guy for the job. And we'll see. If he does a good job, he'll be back next year. If they look even worse, then he probably won't be. But I'm really hoping that it works out for him because, he's a local guy. His father was on all over the air yesterday talking about it. And also another rumor is that Vincent Lecavalier is going to be hired as the assistant GM, but we'll see if that actually comes to fruition.
That would be interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard his name at all since he retired. I'm not sure what he has been up to, but yeah, that would be an interesting reuniting of a phenomenal 1-2 combo that did win themselves a Stanley Cup in Tampa Bay.
They swept the Habs in their first Cup winning season. I remember that they swept them in 4 games in the first round. Tough day.
Remember watching the finals when they I think it was Calgary that they beat, I believe, in
and that epic Lecavalier Iginla fight, captain against captain.
Yes. You don't see that very often in the finals, especially 2 guys like that. Definitely.
Calgary won that game 6, though. That goal in overtime, that was a goal. I don't know why. I don't remember why it was called back, but Calgary should have won that cup.
Well, I think we've talked about that. I know that the limited amount of Canadian teams. Somebody's eventually going to bring the Stanley Cup back up north, and I know that you despise Toronto, you despise Ottawa. How do the Western teams feel? Like, how would you feel about a Calgary Flames Stanley Cup?
I don't mind Calgary. I can't stand Daryl Sutter, but I just hate the style of hockey they play. But he's a good coach, Look what he did with the back-to-back or not 2 cups in 4 years with the LA Kings. They were playing a very strict defensive system. Calgary he said that Calgary reminds him of his LA team. You got some great players on there. You got Matthew Tkachuk. You got Johnny Hockey. So I think they're probably going to make a push also for a guy like Ben Sherratt. He's definitely Daryl Sutter's kind of defenseman. So we'll see. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Calgary win the cup. Definitely, if there's a Canadian team to win it this year, I'd rather them than the Leafs, even though the Leafs are looking like world beaters right now.
Yeah, they've got a goalie. We will get to that. We'll get to they actually have somebody in the conversation. We'll get to the trophy candidates in a little bit. Before we get to that, I just thought of something that we guess who is back for another suspension? Mr. Brad Marchand. And so
it's got to be 10 to 15 games, man. He doesn't learn.
No, exactly.
He does things like this every year, and they just get dirtier and dirtier.
Yep.
And that was absolutely unacceptable. If he doesn't get 10 games, the NHL is an absolute joke. It's ridiculous.
They gave him 6. They gave
him 6? That's ridiculous, man. Come on.
Yeah. This is, I 100% agree. This is Brad Marchand's second suspension of the year. The first one was 3 games. This is his 8th. This is a guy, and he baffles me because when you look at the history of guys that have been, careers of getting suspended, they're usually goons. They're usually fourth line guys. They're usually goons. You got a guy like Marchand who has been in the Hart Trophy candidate for several years.
Team Canada Olympics, he would have been on that team for sure. He's one of the best wingers in the league. He doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need to play like that.
Exactly. And of course, when you talk to Boston fans, they quote unquote, well, no, he's not dirty. He plays with an edge. And my personal favorite, just dodge the question completely and say, well, you'd love to have him on your team. No, as a disgrace to the game, he's got to be 10, 15 games. He's not going to get the message. And I don't think he's going to get the message at 6 because he's going to appeal it. They'll probably knock it down to 4 or 5. I don't think he's going to get the message here either. If he gets suspended again this year, that would be 3. You got to the NHL Department of Player Safety has been a joke. I can't even say Department of Player Safety with a straight face.
I mean, when you got a guy like Stefan Quintal running player safety, who was he was a hard-nosed defenseman. He would fight when he'd have to. He's been suspended a couple times, so you can't get a guy. Well, why don't they get a guy? I don't know, can't really think of a name, but why don't they get a guy that played with finesse, a guy that was a skilled player making those calls?
Yeah, and it's they're bordering on the NBA with their protecting their stars because Brad Marchand, we hate him, he's a disgrace, but he is a star. Like we talked about, he doesn't have to play that way because he is a star. You protect guys like that. Tom Wilson, same thing. Tom Wilson's been suspended 5-6 times. They refuse to throw the book at these guys.
I mean, you can be an agitator without being dirty. And I think that he needs to learn that.
A perfect example would be Sean Avery. Now, as a Ranger fan, I was not a Sean Avery fan. Most Ranger fans will argue, and they love the guy. That antics against Brodeur with waving the stick. I mean, I guess it was funny at the time. I mean, we won the series in 5 games, so maybe he did get him off his game. I don't know. He was a clown, absolutely a clown. He was one of the most hated players in the league amongst the players. But he wasn't trying to hurt people. He wasn't.
To be fair, though, he's bipolar, right? So he wasn't. He's bipolar, so
Okay.
I give him the benefit of the doubt of some of the antics he did just because of his mental health problem.
Well, you know what? And it's all the more, working in his favor that he wasn't dirty. Because if he was dirty and doing Marchand type stuff, then you could chalk it up to the bipolar. But all the more reason that, I'm getting him props because he wasn't out. He was a clown, yes, but he wasn't out to end people's careers.
Sloppy seconds.
What's that?
Sloppy seconds.
Yes.
I was at a game and we were playing the Rangers, so we all started chanting sloppy seconds.
Oh, that's funny. But yeah, so I mean, the NHL has no plan. The NHL is trying to take fighting out of the league, but they're not taking hits to the head and slew foots out of the league. PK Subban's another one. He's got about 4 slew foots this year. He injured one of my guys, Sammy Blaze, out for the year. The NHL is just an absolute joke with protecting their players. How can you want to take fighting out? Fighting is in the game specifically for this reason. When a guy like Marchand or Tom Wilson or PK Subban tries to hurt one of your guys, that is exactly why fighting is in the game. So the NHL wants to remove fighting, but is not doing anything about the slew foots and the hits to the head.
The only way to remove fighting is to remove it from junior, which the QMJHL has done. It's your automatic suspension if you fight. And plus, why the hell are teenagers allowed to be fighting?
Right.
They're children. You got 50 exceptional players that are 15 can play in juniors to 21-year-olds. Why would you want a 16-year-old kid fighting a 21-year-old? It makes absolutely no sense, especially with everything we know about concussions now.
Exactly.
It just makes no sense. I don't think fighting has a place in the game anymore, but I do agree with you. Right now, it's not the time to eliminate it. It needs to be phased out through the kids and then eventually in the NHL.
Yeah, I would agree. And part of that, of course, is also getting rid of the reason to fight, which is getting, the slew foots, the elbows to the head. See, the problem with the NHL is they make their rulings based on if a guy gets hurt. If somebody is an absolutely disgusting, filthy elbow to the head and the guy's down, and if he doesn't get carried off on a stretcher and doesn't get a concussion, the NHL comes in and says, all right, well, he's not hurt, so there's really nothing. We don't need to do anything. That is complete nonsense.
They'll give him a $5,000 fine.
Exactly.
Which is the maximum allowed by the NHLPA.
You punish based on intent, not result. Not if the guy gets carried out on a stretcher, he doesn't know what planet he's on. You don't penalize for that. You penalize on the intent. It's an absolute joke, and we can go on and on about that all day. All right. In any case, we got a couple minutes left, so let's talk about. We are halfway through this. Well, everybody's halfway through the season except for the Islanders. 40
and
games.
The Canadians. Thank God.
What do you guys? No, you guys got 45 games played. You're
Yeah, we got 37 games left. Thank God we don't have 42.
It just looks like you're not halfway through if you look at the win column.
Yeah, but just to jump back quickly on something that Ken Hughes said about St. Louis. He said that this year's the last 37 games are not about winning; it's about development. Exactly. Which I really liked.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great statement. Yeah, you just want to show improvement. You just want to show improvement. You want to show that he's got the locker room, that he's got these guys playing for him. That's all you can ask for. And
you want your best players to be your best players. And unfortunately, they haven't. Our best defenseman been playing like he doesn't give it.
You're not looking for St. Louis to step in there and go 27-10 down the stretch. It ain't going to happen.
No, we want a top 2 draft pick. We want Shane Wright, even though I don't know how strong this draft is. Some people are really adamant that Shane Wright's going to be a number 1 center, 2-way center. If you take a look just on his points, a lot of previous first-round draft picks were up there in scoring. He's, I believe, 19th in OHL scoring, which is not impressive. Yes, he's getting about 1.3 points a game, which is good. But next year's the year. Next year is Connor Bedard, and I don't know the Russian guy's name, but they're 2 generational talents. They're probably the 2 best players that will, to be drafted since Austin Matthews. So.
Nice. Well, you certainly got a bright future there. All right, let's talk trophy predictions. We'll start off with the Vezina, which of course is the best goalie of the season. And these 6 candidates that I came up with. First, Igor Shesterkin, the heir to the throne in New York, leading the NHL amongst, of course, goalies with adequate games played, leading with a .937 save percentage, 2.1 goals against, and a 22-5 record. Now, everybody's record is more or less similar. You got Vasilevsky. Honestly, Vasilevsky's, I'm going to put him at the bottom of this list because with how good Tampa is, he's only, of these 6 guys, he's got a 922, the lowest, 922 save percentage, and 2.49 goals against. That's actually pretty high for a Stanley Cup contending team. Of course, 25-7 because Tampa just scored goals. Then you got 2 teams that usually aren't in the Vezina conversation in Toronto and Carolina. You got Jack Campbell in Toronto, a 925 and a 2.3. Frederick Anderson in Carolina, a 927 and a 2.08. You've got Tristan Jarry for Pittsburgh, definitely in the conversation, a 925 and a 2.21 at 24 and 8. And
you got UC Saros
of Nashville,
9.26,
26 and a 2.39. It's a kind of a hefty goals against as well. But for me, and you're a goalie, so you can offer some insight on this. For me, my biggest stat in the Vezina is save percentage, because goals against is
team stats
figures into that. And save
same thing with wins.
And wins, right? And wins also the team. So, forgive me if I'm gonna sound like a homer here with the Rangers, but I gotta have Igor as my top contender right now. He's with the 937 and the 2.1. The 937 is the best in the league. 2.1 is second, just behind Frederick Anderson of Carolina, but of course their defense surely helps that out. Absolutely sick. So Igor is my top contender right now. How about yours?
Well, my top 3 are Tristan Jarry, Igor Shesterkin, and UC Saros. But for me, I mean, you take a look at the Penguins. They had a tough season the last couple of years, and I really think that Tristan Jarry has been probably the best goalie in the league this year. It's a tough choice between these 3, though. They're all having great seasons. They're all in good teams, so it's really going to come down to, I think, the second half of the season. We'll see who the real guy is. But for me, I'd probably have Tristan Jarry as my front runner.
Fair enough.
He's looked very good. I watched a lot of Penguins hockey, and I have to say, he's just been getting better every year, and I think this year might be his year.
Fair enough. Okay, moving on. I've got 4 contenders for the Norris. I've got, of course, the defending Norris. I was going to say champion. I don't think that's the right word. The defending Norris recipient in Adam Fox of the Rangers, interesting stat I just found out, won it in his second year in the league. The only other defenseman in NHL history to win the Norris in their second year. I'll give you a guess on that.
Was it PK Subban?
No,
it was not. He won in 2014. Was it a Montreal Canadian?
No. In fact, it was your most hated team.
Ray Bourque.
Father of defense. Come on. Bobby Orr.
Bobby Orr, of course.
Yes, of course. Bobby Orr won it in the second year.
Before my time. I never saw him play, so.
Me neither, but his numbers are just insane.
I think it's the only defenseman to win the scoring title.
Yes, I believe so. I believe you're correct. So you got Cale Makar on Colorado, 44 points and a whopping plus 26. Victor Hedman and Fox are pretty much neck and neck, 47 points each. Hedman's a plus 15 and a plus 12. And then you got Roman Josi of Nashville, 46 points and a plus 8. Now, for me, like I said, for the goalies, I put save percentage as my top stat. Obviously, points is going to get you in the Norris conversation. I think plus minus needs to be a much bigger stat. Now, if plus minus is a very controversial statistic, and I think if it's in single digits either way, it doesn't really matter. But I think if it gets to double digits either way, that's going to take it, especially for a defenseman. Because for a defenseman, it shows if the team is if you got a whopping plus or a negative plus or a whopping negative, that means the other team is either scoring goals or not scoring goals when you are on the ice. And as a defenseman, of course, that is your top job. So I would wish that the NHL would put more emphasis on the plus minus in the Norris. But
that's not how the way it works, though. Usually, if you take a look at the last Norris Trophy winners, they've usually been one of the top scorers of defensemen. And I think they should have 2 different defenseman awards. Best offensive defenseman, best defensive defenseman. Then you can, make an argument for like a guy like Shea Weber. Back in his peak, could have won the best defensive defenseman.
Oh,
multiple times.
And Danico might have won one. They did that.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, my guys, I got Adam Fox, Victor Hedman, Roman Yossi as my top three, and Kel McCarr as a close fourth. And I think Hedman is probably going to get a second Norris Trophy this year.
Fair enough. I'm actually going to put Moore as my top candidate right now because of that. He's got 44 points, which is only 3 behind the lead. But that plus 26 is what puts me over the top for him.
Of course, Colorado's a scoring machine, right? I mean, you got Victor Hedman, like I say, he's at plus 15, and he's matched up against the best offensive players night after night after night. And to be plus 15, that's pretty good, if you ask me.
All right, moving on to the big one, the Hart Trophy, the MVP. Of course, Alex Ovechkin in that conversation is
at a fresh age of 36 years old. Crazy.
Years old. He has got Gretzky in the crosshairs for 892. He might not do it, but it is very, very realistic.
He'll definitely reach 800.
Yeah. Oh, 800 is guaranteed. Of course, barring serious injury, or I'm sure we have another lockout coming up. But 29 goals, 59 points. Then you got Jonathan Huberdeau. 17
most underrated player in the league, I think.
47 assists, 64 points. Tied for the lead with Draisaitl at 64 points. And then you got Connor McDavid, of course. He's always in the conversation, 61 points. And like we were talking about before, you got to put Nassim Kadri in there at 60. But a name that you are not a big fan of, one Chris Kreider leading the NHL. He's now tied, Draisaitl tied for 33, but Kreider went into the All-Star break leading the NHL in goals at 33. Now, all hate of the man aside, which is completely understandable, and for those who aren't familiar, in the Rangers-Montreal 2014 Eastern Conference Finals, Game 1, Kreider, a controversial breakaway in which he collided with Price and tore something in his knee. He was out. I know
he slid into Carey Price like Ty Cobb slid into second base.
He was you don't like him. I understand that.
He's a great player, and he's finally looks like the player you guys thought you drafted.
Yeah. His skills were always there. The skills, the speed, the talent was always there. The size. He's playing for a coach. I don't know if he just respects Gallant, if Gallant scared him. I don't know what the deal is, but he's playing every night. That's the thing with Kreider. It's people are calling it a quote unquote breakout year. It's not a breakout year.
Interesting story about Chris Kreider, though. The Montreal Canadiens wanted to draft him when the draft was in Montreal last time, but we ended up drafting Louis LeBlanc because the whole place, when it was available, I think we drafted at 16 or something like that. The whole Bell Center started chanting Louis, 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 and our director of amateur scouting said that if he didn't draft Louis LeBlanc, there was no way he was making out of the Bell Center alive. So Chris Kreider should have been a Montreal Canadian if he didn't give in to the fan pressure.
That would have been a very that would have been a very interesting 2014 run for you guys.
For sure, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, my Hart Trophy, when I got Jonathan Huberdeau as my front runner, just because, Florida's looking like a powerhouse this year. Huberdeau, he's been getting better every year, and he's definitely one of the best players in the NHL. He's an all-around player.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm going to I think this is the first of the 3 ones that we will agree on. Florida is probably at this point the favorite, if not absolutely one of the favorites, if not the favorite. They've got to have guys. You can't be the best team in the league and not have guys in the hardware conversation. So I would absolutely 64 points. I would absolutely as my favorite as well. Well, I'm not sure about the time here. Oh, we got
a minute left. Okay. We got a minute left. So
real quick, how about if 2 teams that you think, one from each conference, that you think are going to have a big second half? For me, we talked about Calgary. I think Calgary had a great start, kind of tailed off a little bit. Now they've won 4 in a row. That's my Western pick. And my Eastern pick, believe it or not, and it pains me to say it, the Islanders. I think the Islanders got a raw deal in the COVID, having to play games with 7 guys out. and they're on their Western Canada trip last night through Vancouver, beaten. They've still got 6-7 games at hand, and I think if they squeak into that wild card, they're just as much of a contender as anyone else. So those are my two teams. What do you got?
Well, in the East, I got the Bruins. I find that they've been underperforming a little bit if you take a look at the roster. So I really think they're going to have a big second half. Even though his name escapes me, just retired their goaltender. What's his name? Anyways, he just retired the other day, so that might hinder them a little bit, but I think they're going to have a good second half regardless. And in the West, I probably have... I think Edmonton is bound to bounce back with the talent they have. Yes, they're weak defensively, but, I mean, I think they need to have a good second half. Otherwise, there are going to be some major changes that need to happen there because there's no way they should be as bad as they are right now.
Yeah, I would agree. They started off, pants on fire, and they've completely dropped. I think they've dropped out of the top 16, 17 in the league.
They're 10th in the West right now.
Yeah, it's going to be anarchy in Edmonton if they don't finally put it together because people are really starting to lose patience. I mean, how many number one picks can you possibly have and still just not be a contender? So,
possibly one of the best players of all time.
Yep. I agree.
Possibly the best player of all time if you just take a look at skill alone.
Yeah. No, I agree. We were definitely seeing something special in McDavid, and the question is, are they wasting him there? Of course, we had the same conversation with Ovechkin for years. It took him a while, but he finally got over the hump and finally got out of the second round. Well, I think that just about wraps it up for us. Patrick, thank you so much for joining again. I think we had a lot of fun here.
Absolutely, anytime.
All right, and thank you to our viewers, our loyal viewers and listeners. Again, Alfonso will be back next week hosting, taking the reins. So until then, this is the LDM show. Thank you for joining us. Everybody have a good night.